Hi, everybody. My name is Megan Macaluso. I am the VP of Customer Success and Operations at ESG, and welcome to Big RYG. Today, I'm going to be talking to everybody about operationalizing iteration and continuous improvement for your customer success organization. In my company, every day, what we do is help our clients build, operationalize, transform, improve all of the different elements of their customer success organization. And the reason why I share that is today what I'm bringing are a few really valuable tools that you can use in your own environment to help really get into place the iteration and a way to continuously improve your organization, which, as we know, means a few really critical things. Number one, your customers are happy, they grow, your customer success teams are less stressed out, and your processes make a little more sense. So the topics that we're gonna talk about today, and they fit really nicely together, are number one, how to do a vision to measurements exercise. Number two, understanding how to leverage maps. And number three is the system with which you can put these things into place. So first and foremost today, I want to touch on how to conduct a vision to measurements exercise. So as teams, we often say, this is what we want to do. This is how we want our world to look. But there's an unclear path on how to get to that state. How do you know that you're meeting your vision, and how do you know that you're measuring the right things along the way? And so the benefits of doing a vision to measurements exercise is it's the simplest way to collect the information you need and to get your team around an initiative. Number two is it will support a clear statement of work and desired outcomes, which is something we all like. Creates a framework for focusing on the right things and having the right conversations. It eliminates time and energy waste, and it grounds both the broad vision and the measurements that we'll use to prove out what we're doing in a really clear fashion, and it allows us to operationalize the vision. So bringing the right people to the table, taking into consideration people that are on your team, people that are outside of your immediate team, that all have access into your customers, that want to do something together. It's a great exercise to get everybody on the same page. So first and foremost, we want to define the vision. So let's say we work at a call center software company, and our vision is to say, if we collect our data, we want to make our customer experience better. And we know there's a lot of data out there, and we think we want to get a tool. So let's come together and decide what that looks like. So your vision would be things like, I want my customers to be using the right features and functionality. I want my customers to see the most amount of value from our solution. I want our customers to enjoy interacting with our business. And our hypothesis, which is the next step, is that we can get to that vision if we are collecting user and behavioral data around how my customers are leveraging my software. So in our example, if it's call center software, my hypothesis may be, hey, as a way to improve my customer's experience, we are going to measure things like how often are agents logging into the software, how many minutes are being used every day, is there other data points such as like billing, ticketing, things like that, that would inform me how to make their experience better. And I believe, as my hypothesis, yes, that if I have that data and it is consolidated in a place where I can see it and do things with it, that my customers will be happier and that they're going to grow. And so you come together with your group to say, are we all aligned that at the end of the day that that's our vision and that this is our hypothesis? Then it's a good time to agree to expected outcomes. And so obviously the big ones are things like, I want my customer's experience to be better. I want my customer to use the system more, right? So those are big lagging indicators that the things that you're putting in place are working. And so do you have metrics in place that can help you get to those expected outcomes? But even ahead of that, you're not going to get those outcomes for a while, right? Like there needs to be decisions around like, what is the data we need? And all the steps along the way that we're going to list out momentarily. And so what can we measure early on to help us as a group know that the direction that we're taking is correct. And so you want to align on leading indicators too. So how do we know that the data is the data we want? How do we know the system is the system we want? How do we know that once we start looking at this data and triggering things like follow-up calls when people haven't logged in a long time, or triggering a reach out once somebody has opened a bunch of tickets, et cetera, like that we're able to do those things? What are those leading indicators? And it can be things like acknowledging that the data we have is right, acknowledging that we're able to make these touch points. Because if you can't do those things, those expected outcomes you have around customers staying and being happier are not going to happen. So make sure that as a group, you're saying, let's track this early on to make sure that the things that we're doing are right. That should lead then to the expected outcomes that we expect. So this is a great time now that you've defined your vision, you have your hypothesis, you've agreed to what the outcomes are, to list your critical success factors. What's a critical success factor? It's something that you need to be successful. And it's a great time to gather this, anticipating that you'll need to go to your leadership most likely and say, I may need a budget. I may need people's time and effort in order to make this work. Hey, data team, I'm going to need somebody over there to dig into this data and make sure that all of the data is hygienic, because if it's not, I'm going to be getting false information. I'm going to need a tool potentially. What is the budget for a tool? What is the return on investment for a tool? How do I know what tool I need in order to be successful here? So keep an eye on what those critical success factors are, so that you can make the case for the things that you need in order to be successful with your initiative. And that really comes back to those expected outcomes. So if you're going to your CFO to say, hey, I'm going to need a budget to buy a tool, and they ask you why, you'll say, well, these are the expected outcomes. These are the things that we're trying to drive. And from a business perspective, that probably looks something like increased revenue and reduced cost, right? So having that packaged up and really knowing exactly what it is you need early on is going to help you make the case for the resources and the budget that you need to get those things accomplished. Identifying assumptions. This is a really important step that is not common. We don't do it perfectly at my organization either. But it's important that when you're working collaboratively with a team to advance an initiative like this, that everyone's on the same page for the assumptions they have. It's really easy for people on different sides of a decision or a program to be thinking about things in a different way. And so getting on the table that maybe people are thinking about it differently, right? So maybe as a customer success leader, you're saying things like, well, I assume I'm going to be able to get access to this data. I assume it will be able to connect these disparate things into one centralized tool to look at this data. I assume that my leadership is okay with me looking at this data, doing analysis, and then making customer impacting decisions with it. Somebody on a marketing team may say something like, oh, I assume I will also get access to this data to run marketing initiatives as well, right? So different folks in different places may have different assumptions. Somebody from your support team may say, well, my assumption is that you're not going to need to have access to Zendesk or a system of mine like that. And so I don't really need to be part of the conversation at certain points. And then you may not have that same assumption. So get used to having these conversations and allowing people to be free and open to talk about the assumptions they're making on the initiative that you're working together on to clear up any misunderstandings. And at that point is when you can start to define your next steps. What is the plan? What kind of project do we want to build? Who's owning different elements of this project to move this forward? How are we coming back together to review those expected outcomes and make those iterations as we move along? So that we're consistently reviewing that and getting together. So this is the point at which you do that. And honestly, we usually start here. We usually start with having a meeting and saying, let's just get going. Let's just start working, which is a great attitude. But make sure you have those foundational elements in place and that everyone is aligned on your vision, your hypothesis, your expected outcomes, your critical success factors. You've talked about your assumptions, and all of that is leading into your next steps. So journey maps and service blueprints. Our view is that if you take a customer journey and you take a service blueprint, what that will give you as an organization is, number one, the areas to focus on. Number two, the operational strategies that you should be deploying. And number three, capacity planning, budgeting, things like that. So how do you really know what a journey map is? What is a service blueprint? How do those fit together? And then how do you get to a place where you can determine the area of focus, your strategies, your budget, and capacity? I'm going to share with you a template of a mapping exercise that we like to use that's relatively straightforward, that you should be able to work with your team on internally and even get an as-is state of this today to get a view of what's happening both in front of your customers and internally in your business. So as you can see on the top, you have your customer journey. What is it that they're doing from their perspective, working with your business? Below is the service blueprint. That is your internal phases, your internal operations, all of the touch points that are happening and all of the people that are involved with your customer inside your organization. And if we look at the phases that are designed here, what it is really important is to understand what your customer's journey has been from the very beginning. And that means from the time they were aware and started to want to work with your company to the time they've decided to buy more, stay, or leave. So the phases that I've indicated here are, number one, explore; two, engage; three, offer; four, agree; five, onboard; six, co-create; seven, realize. And then we'll talk through all those disparate touch points along the way. But I definitely encourage in your business to really start at the very beginning of your customer's journey. We're guilty of this too, where I work, where, oftentimes it's very easy to start here at onboard when you're in customer success, because that's where things are really start to happening with your customer. But understand what got your customer there. Why did they buy from your company? What did they like about that experience that got them to the place where they're now co-creating value with you and your company? So let's talk about that. What are all of those touch points? So in the boxes marked T and in the green, what I've indicated are capturing those moments in time that are really critical where your customer and your business are interacting with one another. So in Explore, that could look like, I came upon your website. I saw something on LinkedIn that involved your software that looked interesting to me. If we use our call center software example, maybe I'm looking for a better software to give to my agents because it's unstable. Things aren't working. I don't like the company that we're working with now. So now I'm trying to tinker around and see what's out there. Oh, I came across your website. Oh, I came across LinkedIn and that was interesting to me. So let's engage. Second stage. At this point, maybe I'm asking something through a chat bot. Maybe I am getting in contact with a salesperson now who's starting to help me understand what it is that this company provides to me. And then we move to offer. Okay, so I've looked, I'm interested. I've started engaging and talking to someone at your company, and now I have an offer. I know what the price is. I know what that includes. I know the statement of work. How is that process going? Particularly with B2B, this is tricky time to get this right. And often more stakeholders are coming to the table at this point. So understand what those touch points are while they're going through offer, and then what gets them from offering to agree to say, yes, as I will spend our very precious company money to buy your software. And now it's time to onboard. new stakeholders are coming in, new people are getting introduced to one another on both sides of the fence. Expectations are being set for how this technology will be deployed. And so what are those touch points? What does your kickoff call look like? What are the self-knowledge types of things that your customers are doing during that onboarding process? And how is that then informing in that very critical onboarding phase that they're going to stay and they're going to start to co-create value with you? So they are adopting now the solution into their work, into their lives, into their time every day. And what are those critical steps that allow that to happen? What are those moments in time to know that your customer is doing that? And then at the end of the day, that they're realizing the value that they expected when they were going through that offer and agree place. Yes, this is what I expected. Yes, this company is exceeding my expectations. So I'm going to continue to invest with them. So what are those discrete touch points? And then how are your customers thinking in those touch points, right? And the only way to know this is to validate it with your customers. It's a really critical thing that we all like to skip frequently. I like to think that I know what my customers are thinking. We all do. But unless you validate it, you don't know what your customers are thinking along the way. So understanding what those little moments are where a customer is saying, I had this touch point, I felt this way, yes, I'm going to move forward. And you as a business capturing that information to say, well, how do we continue to do that? When customers have a positive reaction to a touch point that we've had, how are they going to move forward? And how do we keep that momentum going and continue to do those activities? So capture those moments in time, talk to your customers, interview your customers, send surveys to your customers, understand who your customers are. This is a great opportunity to do a persona exercise and say, who are my customers? What do they need? What are they thinking and feeling? And then how do I validate that to know that we're doing the right things on our side? So in the circles, with the E, you have people internally, employees internally that manage these points in time, that are at the end of the day responsible for those experience at those customer touch points. So for Explore, that may be your marketing team. For Engage, it's probably business development, sales. During the offer period, that could be a lot of people. That could be procurement, sales is still involved. You may have other levels of leadership dealing with executive stakeholders, negotiating, right? But who owns all of those touch points is really important to understand at these moments in time. Agree. So once something has been decided on and a contract has gotten signed, what is that process and who owns it? And then, right, we generally have a pretty big handoff right here into onboarding. So who's owning the onboarding exercise? Who's owning the co-creation? Maybe that's you. As a customer success manager, it might be your job to own what it is to work consistently with your customer and make sure that the two of you are working together to derive the value that was expected from your solution. And then who owns the realization of that? At the end of the day, like, who owns your customer being happy? And my guess is that you have a lot to do with that. And so now that you've defined the touch points, now that you know how your customers are thinking about it, and you know who's in charge along the way, it's up to those people to say, well, this is what I need to be successful in these touch points and to provide a positive experience for my customers. And these are conversations that need to be had to know how this whole value stream is working together. As a marketing agent, I know that when our prospects come to our website and they click on this link and a salesperson reaches out to them, that process, when it's really clean and simple and straightforward, works well for us. We've validated that with our customers to know that they've moved from the explore phase and now are engaging with us. This is what I need to ensure that is the experience on our website from a marketing perspective. And then go on down the line with everybody that we identified. Certainly salespeople, once you know what works for customers, are going to be able to articulate what it is they need in that moment. For those of us in customer success down the line that are onboarding, co-creating value, and realizing value with our customers, it's important, really important to know what the touch points are to really understand our customers so that we can clearly state, we know when we do onboarding this way and we have these tools and we have this access, it goes really well. So here's what I'm going to need moving forward to do that. And then that's budget. So prioritizing those needs, looking at the cost of those needs is really going to help you understand what the required resources are and the required capacity is to support your customers in those moments in time. If you're in a consistent pattern of doing this within your business, within your group, and you're keeping an eye on this, what you should start to be able to measure is velocity. What you're doing is you're removing roadblocks for customers to move from one phase to another. And you understand what it takes to get there. And sometimes the decisions aren't going to be right. But if this is consistent, this will work better and better and better over time. Your budget will get more and more predictable and forecastable, and your customers will be happier. And that happiness turns into growth, and that turns into investment, and it turns into things like the clarity around your role becomes better. And so really recommend looking at doing this exercise with people in your company and making it a collaborative and open conversation about what is happening in these moments in time. And most importantly, dig in with your customers to validate that the things that are happening are indeed happening and they're having the reactions that you believe they're having. And that will really lead you to be able to run a sound business and drive toward customer success and value co-creation. And so lastly, how do we bring these things together? And so as a business in our call center environment, our call center software environment, where I've said, look, as a customer success leader, I have brought my team together to say, we've created a journey map that starts here and ends there. We understand who our customers are. We understand that we want our customers to be happy and have good experiences along the way. We think that we need data to do that. We think we need a tool to deploy that. We've all aligned on what it's going to take to get there. We've validated it with our customers. We've done all of these exercises between vision and measurements and creating a journey map. Now what? Now you bring a group together whose purpose is to continually improve against those things that you've learned and the place where you want to go. So operationalizing continual improvement and innovation. How do you create that system? Number one, it's really important that the culture embodies the following behaviors. Number one, you want your people to feel creative, independent. You want people to engage in this collaboration. You want to fail quick and allow for failure so you can learn from your failures. Again, collaboration being the thing that's tying everybody together to move forward. People need to listen to each other and people need to trust each other. If you're going to bring folks together to continue to march down the road and improve and grow over time, it's critical that when folks show up to the table, they're not worried about saying something stupid. They're not worried that it's not exactly aligned with a project plan that's been created. You don't want people to feel like they're going to get in trouble if something they try in earnest toward the vision fails. You want people to try and test and iterate. So how do we put that together? Number one, brainstorm ideas with your team, highly engaged, regular workshops with varied participants. Again, get people outside of your little echo chamber who are involved on different sides of your initiative to come together and brainstorm. The next step is taking action on the ideas by defining them and adding them to a backlog. So those of you that are familiar with Agile, there's plenty of that baked in here, is pull those priority items out and start getting them into a backlog so you can start to keep track of what came out of those brainstorming sessions. 3, prioritize. All right, we've brainstormed. We have come up with a lot of different concepts and things that we want to do. How do we prioritize those ideas and then plan them into sprint cycles? So sprints allow for quick wins and quick adjustments. They ensure that the best innovations make it. So if you're unfamiliar with how to run sprints or a backlog, it's not super complicated. I definitely look into it to make sure that the iterative activities that are going on to advance your cause here work within a system that's easy to easy to manage. 3, test your stuff. It mitigates risk, it improves investigation, and it allows for clean feedback. If you're doing a new process, a new playbook, new workshops, new conversations, pilot, right? Take these things with small identified groups of customers and test them. So in our example of we're collecting data where we want to put it into a system and we want to evaluate whether that gives us critical information as to what our customers are experiencing. Test out assumptions as you're getting data in your system early and often so that you can make adjustments very quickly. And then validate or invalidate with your internal folks with retrospectives by getting customer feedback. Hey, we thought that if we took this data point and it triggered this communication, that that's what customers wanted. Turns out when we talk to them that that's not true. So we're not going to continue to do that. Inversely, if that process went really well, then you can scale it and roll it out as a process, but you've tested it and you validated it with customers to make sure that it's something that is positive to their experience. And then you keep that going, right? Like this is a cyclical exercise. We recommend having a defined team that does this, that understands clearly, again, what the vision is, so that you can work together to go from where you are today to the as-is state where you want to be. So thank you so much. I really appreciate everyone's time. These are 3 really critical tools that we at our organization are always working to get better at, that I hope that you can take back to your businesses and use straight away for things that you really care about getting into place. And really looking forward to doing some Q&A and hearing what questions you have. Thanks so much. I did want to say throughout the presentation, I noticed a lot of really great suggestions from folks in the chat around things that you guys are doing internally. And one of the things that I saw was around that sales to CS handoff, and how some of you have operationalized that piece of it. And so really nice to see those suggestions coming through. So I do have a question here from Kate. Hi, Kate. It's good to see you. Do you have recommendations of a resource for CS Ops folks to learn more about how the Agile development framework can apply to CS? So really good question, Kate. I will put a resource up for you. There's actually for ITIL training, for those of you that are familiar with ITIL 4, there is a new driving stakeholder value class that my team and I have taken, work with a gentleman by the name of Jeff Jensen, who is attending this session as well. It is a great course to understand how to bring these agile practices into the things that we're doing with customer success. So again, that's called Driving Stakeholder Value. And just take a peek into the chat box and I'll make sure that we get that link over to you. There's another question here. CS receives a lot of requirements, and in most cases, they deliver value, but are highly personalized. How do you choose the better? This is a really, I think this is something that we run into a lot, right? That customer success is expected to really understand their customers' needs and deliver to that value. But that also, that can get really difficult to scale. And so finding that balance and trying to operationalize that can be very difficult. So to that point, Juan, like if I look at the processes that we talked about, if you're looking at vision to measurements, and let's say you've got a group together and you're like, look, we want all of our customers to have this high customer experience, but also, we're feeling a little inhibited to scale that because we're doing something different for every customer. So let's come together and say, what are all of the things that we need to both scale and repeat some of the things that we're doing, while also really keeping an eye on the areas that we need to stay personalized on. So Isabel has a question. Hi, I'm new to the CS Ops role. Congratulations. And still a student. What skills should I work on developing to further help my company grow and be the best that they can be? That's a really great question. For us, it's about learning and investigating all of the different things that go into customer success operations. Operations are there to enable your team and your customers to achieve success, right? So get a really good understanding of the metrics. Know what is being measured at companies that do this really well. What are the tools that are out there and what do they do? Learn about data hygiene. A lot of times we're trying to cram a lot of information from a lot of different places into systems and tools so that they can drive behavior so that we can improve our customers' experience. But all of that is really dependent on how clean and hygienic your data is. And so for us, a critical part of CS operations is really understanding your data, knowing the sources, knowing what's possible and what's not possible, and getting your head around that. So just as someone that's new to that role, those are some elements. And then in addition, really understand the customers, right? So as a new person in the organization, spend some time to know what customers are experiencing and also what CSMs are experiencing day to day so that you can better bring that empathy into the operational things you're putting in place. So another question, any tips or suggestions for how to best get the why did you buy question in front of customers? Some CSMs feel like this question is awkward and doesn't fit their kickoff call flow. Should this be on the sales team to ask pre-handoff? Really good question. And I think I saw another point in this in the chat as well around I don't want to ask my customers questions they've already been asked before, right? You don't want to make your customers repeat things because they're ready to get going and get moving. So yes, number one, if there's a really good way to capture those data points during the sales process and have them come to customer success without having to go directly to the customer to ask, that's really important. So as much overlap as you have with sales and customer success at the very beginning so that transition feels more seamless for your customers, that works really nicely. Sometimes that's easier said than done. I think 95% of the time it's easier said than done. The other piece is sometimes you have new stakeholders at that time. So the reasons why the company bought or why the buyer bought may feel different than the person that has now inherited the implementation. So make sure you understand the point of view of someone new who maybe wasn't in the same part of the buying process as somebody who signed the contract. But it is awkward. Also, if you get to a place where you're mature enough to survey, get some of these data points, understand how to measure things like engagement, that also may help you understand without having to go directly to the customer to have those conversations. But lastly, don't be afraid. Sometimes customers want to be asked, why are you here? What brought you to us, right? So if you can find a unique way to make a connection with your customer to find out that information, those can be really valuable conversations, even if they feel very awkward. All right, so we've got some more good questions coming in. Let's take this one. You mentioned a relationship with the sales team. How do we ensure our sales team is taking complete notes to ensure a new client is not having to repeat information that CSM should have prior to an onboarding call? Yes, absolutely, like we talked about before. And I've been in sales and I love sales teams, but salespeople are notoriously not great at taking a lot of notes and putting them in a CRM, right? So operationalizing that and saying this is the checklist of the things that I really have to know going into onboarding. Also, this will make it, Mr. Salesperson, that you don't have to get phone calls from your angry customer when things have come over the fence that weren't understood. Let's see. Any tools you can recommend where CS teams can help transfer goals, pain points, KPI, or other overview about a customer so other areas in the company, marketing, product, et cetera, are aware of this in a scalable way. So we're talking about like a comprehensive feedback loop, right? So what tools can you use to capture that information? So a tool like Churn Zero can really help you do that, right? If you give visibility and can pull reports and have that data loaded into a tool like that so it becomes visible to everybody, that can be really helpful. A lot of it is going to be mapping what the data points are that you're looking to collect, when they're coming into what system, in what way, and then how can you centralize those to circulate them around. So sometimes that can be like Salesforce, even manually to begin with, if you get the process right. I don't wait to have a tool to do that. Say like, what does marketing need? What does product need? What does CS need? What does support need? What do we all need to understand about our customers through the buying process and into the using process that need to be generated and circulated? One, identify what those data points are. Two, identify the origin of where they're coming into your ecosystem. And then three, kind of understand places where all of those can tie together. All right, let's see. Andrew, what is the best way to engage with old clients or contacts from a past position to create valuable opportunities in a new customer success position? That is a tricky place to be in. Something to keep in mind is it takes time to develop relationship and rapport. And so entering with a lot of inquisition's not the right word, but a lot of curiosity and being interested in making connections with your customers is really the most valuable first step. It's difficult when there's an established client and you're new to that relationship and you're trying to understand how to bring value to them when there's a lot of history there. But the other thing I would say is businesses and priorities and things are always changing for your customer. And so there's always new information and there are new points of views to understand. And so really focus in on them on what has the journey been like to now? How has that been? What's been working for you? How can I continue those things? And then what's changing in your environment that like we can start to understand together. So again, coming with that empathetic eye is really going to help sort of broaden your understanding of the customer and then start to create ideas for how to make that relationship better. So Bradley, who should influence a product update? Sales or CS? Ooh, that's a big question. Churn due to lack of product enhancement or customization is easy to identify. How can sales help influence this more with lingering prospects and new clients? This goes back to, I think, the earlier question around collecting those critical data points. So I don't think it's an either or scenario. I think often, companies are working on breaking down those silos between sales, product, customer success, so that all of that feedback that's coming back from customers on the things they need to be successful and how they're being enabled to do those things within your solution, it doesn't really get circulated. So coming to the table across organizations is really critical. So when we were talking about those brainstorming sessions and being really open about what's happening, like these are really great periods of time to bring together product, sales, support, customer success, everybody, and say like, hey, here's what we need to know and understand so we know what to prioritize in terms of what do we do with our product or how do we change our services? Or are we marketing things the right way? Are we training things the right way? How is it that we as a team, one team, can collect that information and make a positive impact for our customers? So that would be my best suggestion, Bradley, is really start with a lot of cross-organizational conversation to understand how you can work together as a team and get all of that information circulated so that it has a positive impact. So running up on the end of our time here. Really appreciate all the participation here and all the really good questions and all of the good stuff that I learned in the chat as well. Please visit the ESG virtual booth for more content, more ideas. We've got a lot of stuff we love to share with people. Enjoy the rest of the sessions.